This is really bad.
Okay, this is bad. So what you want to do? It's good, it's bad. Good.
Why are you yelling at me?
You guys talk Hindi and nobody, you don't tell me what's being said. You think
Why?
I don't need to be comforted? You think
Did
I'm
you
fine?
did you say anything?
You think I'm okay? You think everything is okay with me? Why does everybody think it's okay for me to say?
Jenny spent years fighting to stay in India with Sumit, but now the most disturbing twist imaginable has completely reversed their story. Because the question is no longer whether Jenny will be forced to leave India, but whether she can leave at all when she believes returning to America may be the safest choice for her health. What makes the situation even more complicated is that the person standing closest to her is also the person asking her to wait. Sumit says he does not want Jenny making a long international journey without him, and on the surface, that sounds like exactly what a loving husband should say. The problem is that Sumit cannot simply pack a suitcase and leave for the United States whenever Jenny is ready, which means his desire to protect her could also become the very thing keeping her in India. That is where this situation stops looking simple, because nobody is accusing Sumit of locking Jenny inside a house or physically preventing her from leaving. The real tension is much harder to see, because it comes from love, dependence, fear, paperwork, and the possibility that Jenny may feel guilty about leaving the man she spent so many years fighting to be with. After everything they survived together, walking onto a plane without Sumit would not feel like another ordinary trip home. It would represent the first time in years that Jenny made a major life decision based almost entirely on what she needed rather than what their relationship needed. For anyone who has followed Jenny and Sumit from the beginning, that distinction matters more than it might seem. Jenny built almost her entire reality television story around sacrifice. She crossed the world for Sumit, endured the humiliation of discovering that the man she knew online had not initially been honest about who he was, survived the revelation that he had been married, dealt with years of resistance from his family, and repeatedly defended a relationship that almost everyone around her believed came with too many complications. Every time something went wrong, Jenny waited for the next solution, the next conversation, the next promise, and the next moment when Sumit would finally be free to build the life they had imagined. Eventually, she got what she had fought for. She married Sumit, stayed in India, and proved that their relationship could survive circumstances that would have destroyed most couples long before the wedding. That is exactly why this twist hits so hard. Jenny has already spent years proving that she was willing to choose Sumit over comfort, distance, family pressure, and outside criticism. But now she may be facing a situation where choosing herself could require temporarily leaving him behind. Concerns about Jenny's health have created conversations about whether returning to the United States could give her easier access to her daughters, familiar support, and medical care she feels more comfortable navigating. That does not automatically mean treatment in America is magically better, and it does not mean Jenny is helpless in India. But when someone is frightened about their health, being close to family can become just as important emotionally as anything written on a medical chart. Jenny has daughters in America who would naturally want to know exactly what is happening. And Jenny herself may begin thinking about what happens if her condition becomes harder for Sumit to manage alone. The obvious solution would seem simple. If Jenny wants to go home temporarily, she gets on a plane and Sumit follows when he can. Except Sumit does not see it that way. Sumit becomes increasingly uncomfortable with the idea of Jenny traveling such a long distance without him. He tells her that airports are exhausting even for healthy travelers, that connecting flights can become chaotic, and that he cannot live with himself if something happens while she is thousands of miles away from him. His argument is emotional, rather than cruel, which actually makes the situation more complicated. If Sumit were openly selfish, Jenny could simply reject what he was saying. Instead, he frames his concern around protecting her, and Jenny understands exactly why he feels that way. She also understands the part neither of them can avoid. Sumit may need to wait for permission to enter the United States. That one detail changes everything, because Jenny's possible travel plans are now tied to a process neither of them completely controls. If his paperwork takes longer than expected, Jenny has to decide whether she keeps waiting beside him or leaves India first. Sumit believes they should travel together, while Jenny slowly begins wondering whether together is still the most important part of the decision. At first, she does not push back strongly. Jenny has spent enough years dealing with immigration problems, cultural complications, and family resistance to know that panic rarely makes anything easier. She tells Sumit that she understands why he wants to accompany her, but she also begins asking practical questions that make him visibly uncomfortable. What happens if his approval does not arrive soon? What happens if her daughters want to come get her? What happens if a doctor tells her she should not delay a trip she has already decided to make? Sumit keeps giving the same answer in different ways. They will figure it out together. Normally that would sound reassuring, but Jenny has heard versions of that promise before. This is where viewers who remember their history would immediately become suspicious. Not necessarily because Sumit is secretly planning something sinister, but because delays have followed this relationship from the very beginning. Jenny waited while Sumit hid parts of his life from her, waited while his marriage situation was resolved, waited while his family fought against their relationship, and waited while he struggled to balance his own choices against the expectations placed on him. Sumit has often looked most comfortable when the final decision could be postponed until tomorrow. Jenny's health concerns make tomorrow feel different. This time, the delay would not simply mean another argument or another postponed wedding plan. Jenny feels older, more physically vulnerable, and increasingly aware that she cannot organize every major decision around Sumit's ability to solve another problem. For the first time, she begins quietly asking herself whether her loyalty has turned into a habit so powerful that she no longer knows when she is allowed to choose something for herself. That question becomes even more uncomfortable when one of Jenny's daughters calls. The conversation begins calmly, but the tone changes as soon as Jenny explains that she is still in India, because Sumit does not want her traveling without him. Her daughter does not immediately attack Sumit, because she knows that would only make Jenny defensive. Instead, she asks a very simple question. If Jenny genuinely wants to come home, why does Sumit have to be ready before Jenny can leave? Jenny does not have a quick answer. She explains that Sumit is worried about her traveling alone, and her daughter immediately offers another possibility. She could fly to India herself, stay with Jenny for several days, and travel back with her. Suddenly, one of the biggest reasons Jenny supposedly has to wait disappears. Jenny would not have to travel alone, and Sumit could remain in India while his own paperwork continued. That solution should make everyone feel better. Instead, it creates the first real fracture. Sumit becomes noticeably quiet when Jenny raises the idea. He does not say her daughter cannot come, but he immediately starts listing reasons why the plan may be difficult. International tickets are expensive, Jenny could still become exhausted, coordinating everything would take time, and he would feel terrible sending his wife away without knowing when he could see her again. None of those concerns are ridiculous, but Jenny hears something underneath them that she cannot ignore. The problem may not actually be that she would be alone. The problem may be that she would be leaving without Sumit. That difference completely changes the emotional stakes, because now Jenny has to ask whether Sumit is protecting her from a dangerous journey or protecting himself from the possibility of separation. Those two motives can look almost identical from the outside. A person can say, "I need to be there for you," because they love you deeply, but they can also say the exact same thing because they are terrified of what happens when you discover you can function without them. For Sumit, that fear would not be difficult to understand. Jenny has spent years centering her life around India and around their marriage, while America represents the part of her life she gave up to make that relationship possible. If Jenny returns to the United States and suddenly has her daughters around her every day, familiar food, familiar language, familiar doctors, familiar routines, and people constantly asking whether she really wants to go back to India, Sumit would have no control over how that experience changes her. He could tell himself she would only be gone for a few weeks. Then a few weeks could become a few months. Jenny could begin feeling stronger and more independent. Her daughters could remind her that she has options. She could experience what it feels like not to wake up every morning surrounded by the consequences of a decision she made years earlier. None of that means she would stop loving Sumit. But love is not the only thing that keeps people in relationships. Routine, sacrifice, fear of starting over, and the need to prove everyone else wrong can become powerful anchors too. That is the possibility Sumit may be frightened to face. Jenny begins seeing it as well. During one argument, she tells Sumit that she has spent years trusting him whenever he asked for more time. She trusted him when his family situation became complicated, trusted him when marriage seemed impossible, and trusted him every time he promised that another obstacle would eventually disappear. Now she is asking for that trust in return. If she needs to leave India before him, she needs Sumit to believe that getting on a plane does not mean abandoning their marriage. Sumit responds that this is different because he is worried about her health. Jenny asks the question he does not want to hear. If my daughter comes with me, what exactly are you worried about then? The room goes quiet. That silence becomes the moment everything underneath the argument finally surfaces. Sumit admits that he does not know how long they could be separated. He worries that Jenny's daughters already believe she sacrificed too much for him, and he fears that once she returns home, they will convince her not to come back. He tells Jenny that he is not trying to control her, but he cannot pretend the thought of losing her does not terrify him. For the first time, the argument becomes more honest. The visa is no longer just paperwork. The flight is no longer just transportation. Jenny returning to America without Sumit represents the possibility that the entire balance of their marriage could shift. That admission actually makes Sumit's behavior easier to understand, but it also makes Jenny more determined to challenge it. She tells him that she cannot prove her love by remaining physically beside him forever, especially if she believes going home temporarily would make her feel safer. If their marriage only works when Jenny stays in India, then the real problem is much bigger than a visa. That line would hit Sumit harder than any accusation about manipulation. For years, Jenny was the person most desperate to make India work. She defended their marriage against people who said the cultural differences were too large, the family conflict was too painful, and the age gap would eventually create practical problems neither of them wanted to discuss. Now she is the one saying that love has to survive distance if necessary. Sumit starts pushing back by reminding her how much they fought to finally be together. He says they have already spent too many years dealing with separation, obstacles, and people trying to tear them apart. Why would Jenny voluntarily choose another separation now that they finally have peace? Jenny's answer is simple, but devastating. Because this time, the decision is about her. That is the emotional center of the entire situation. Jenny has spent years being described as the woman who sacrificed everything for love, but sacrifice stops being romantic when one person becomes expected to do it every time there is a crisis. She moved. She waited. She accepted humiliation. She rebuilt trust. She endured hostility from Sumit's family. She repeatedly adjusted her expectations around problems created by circumstances she did not control. Now Sumit may be facing the first major situation where loving Jenny requires him to accept something that makes him deeply uncomfortable. He may have to let her go first. The tension gets even stronger when Jenny's daughter actually begins discussing travel arrangements. Suddenly, what had felt like a theoretical argument becomes a real possibility. There are dates, possible flights, questions about luggage, and conversations about how long Jenny might stay in America. Sumit watches the plan become more concrete and realizes he can no longer calm himself with the idea that Jenny is merely frustrated. She is genuinely considering leaving. That is when another uncomfortable question enters the story. If Sumit eventually travels to America with Jenny, would that opportunity benefit him personally as well? Of course it would. Being able to accompany his wife to the United States would allow Sumit to experience the country Jenny left behind, meet more of her family on their own ground, and potentially remain beside her during an emotionally important period. None of that automatically makes his intentions suspicious. A husband wanting to travel with his wife is completely normal. The issue is whether Jenny's decision becomes dependent on Sumit's opportunity. If she believes she should leave sooner, but Sumit keeps asking her to wait because he wants them to arrive together, then the visa starts controlling two lives instead of one. That is why viewers would naturally begin questioning what Sumit actually means when he says he cannot let Jenny travel without him. Does he mean, "I am scared something will happen to you"? Does he mean, "I am scared you will decide not to come back"? Or does he mean both? That ambiguity makes the situation far more interesting than turning Sumit into a simple villain. He can genuinely love Jenny and still behave selfishly. He can genuinely fear for her health and also fear being left behind. He can want to protect her while unconsciously making the situation about his own anxiety. Jenny can understand his fear without allowing it to control her decision. That is where their relationship reaches a point it has never reached before. In another conversation, Jenny tells Sumit she wants him to imagine their roles reversed. If Sumit needed to return somewhere important for his own health or family support, but Jenny's paperwork prevented her from traveling, would he expect himself to wait indefinitely just because she was afraid to be separated? Sumit says the comparison is unfair. Jenny tells him it is exactly the same. He argues that she does not understand how vulnerable he feels imagining her so far away. Jenny replies that vulnerability is not a reason to make someone else stay. That exchange exposes the difference between love and dependence in a way neither of them can avoid anymore. Jenny is not saying Sumit does not care about her. She is saying that caring about someone does not automatically give you the right to decide what risks they are allowed to take for themselves. Sumit becomes frustrated because, in his mind, everything he is doing comes from fear of losing her. He believes that should prove his love. Jenny sees the opposite danger. If fear becomes the reason every decision has to happen on Sumit's timeline, then she will never know whether she is staying because she wants to stay or because leaving would make him fall apart. For a couple with their history, that question lands hard. Jenny once ignored enormous warning signs because she believed the love story was worth fighting for. She gave Sumit chance after chance when most people around her would have walked away. That persistence eventually became the defining feature of their relationship. But persistence can become dangerous when people start believing that walking away from any situation means they failed. Jenny now has to separate two ideas she once treated as the same thing. Leaving India temporarily is not necessarily leaving Sumit. Choosing family support is not necessarily rejecting her husband. Getting on a plane first is not necessarily ending a marriage. If Sumit cannot believe those things, then his fear may reveal just how fragile the security underneath their relationship actually is. The tension reaches its peak when Jenny finally tells Sumit she has made a decision. She is not waiting indefinitely. If her daughter can come, and if Jenny feels physically capable of traveling with help, she intends to return to the United States first. Sumit can continue his own process and join her later if everything works out. Sumit's reaction is not explosive anger. It is worse. He looks devastated. He asks Jenny whether she has already made up her mind about staying in America permanently. Jenny immediately says no, but Sumit's question tells her exactly what he has been afraid of all along. His biggest fear was never simply the flight. His biggest fear was what happens after she lands. Jenny tells him that if he truly trusts their marriage, he has to trust her when she is thousands of miles away, just as much as when she is sitting next to him in India. Sumit says he does trust her, but he does not trust the pressure she will face from people who have never supported their relationship. Jenny pushes back harder than he expects. Her daughters are not enemies, they are her family. If they worry about her, they have every right to ask questions. If they believe Jenny should stay in America longer, Jenny can listen to them without automatically obeying them. Sumit cannot spend the rest of their marriage treating every outside opinion as a threat. For once, Jenny is not defending Sumit from her family. She is defending her right to hear them. That shift is enormous. It forces Sumit to confront something he may have avoided for years. Jenny's sacrifices created a life where he became her closest source of emotional support in India. But that does not mean he should be her only source of support. If Jenny is frightened about her future, she deserves to be surrounded by as many people who love her as possible. That includes people thousands of miles away. The most powerful part of this story is that there does not need to be a secret villain for the situation to become unhealthy. Sumit does not need to be running a visa scam. Jenny does not need to be planning a secret escape. Her daughters do not need to be plotting to destroy the marriage. Everyone can believe they are protecting Jenny while wanting completely different things. Sumit wants her beside him because he believes he can care for her, and because separation terrifies him. Her daughters want her closer because they have already spent years watching their mother build a life far away from them. Jenny wants everyone to stop turning her decision into a referendum on whom she loves more. That is the twist nobody expected. The woman who once fought harder than anyone to stay in India may now have to fight just as hard for the freedom to leave temporarily, without making everyone believe her marriage is collapsing. As the imagined departure date gets closer, Sumit's behavior starts changing. He becomes quieter rather than more argumentative. He helps Jenny organize documents, asks questions about the flight, and begins writing down things her daughter should know about Jenny's routine. The shift suggests that he finally understands that continuing to resist could damage the very relationship he is trying to protect. Yet one fear remains. He asks Jenny for one promise. He wants her to tell him that she will come back. Jenny cannot give him the answer he wants. She tells him she plans to come back, but she will not promise exactly when because she does not know how she will feel once she is in America or what circumstances may change. Sumit hears uncertainty. Jenny sees honesty. That difference represents everything they have been struggling with. Sumit wants certainty because certainty makes him feel safe. Jenny has learned after years of chaos that promises made under pressure do not guarantee anything. She would rather tell him the truth than say whatever keeps him calm. For perhaps the first time in their relationship, Jenny refuses to build the future around reassurance. She tells Sumit that if they have survived everything else, they should be able to survive a temporary separation. If they cannot, then staying physically together would only be hiding a problem that already exists. That is when the title's question finally has an answer. Why is Jenny allegedly stuck in India? Not because there is a locked door. Not because Sumit physically controls her passport. Not because she has no possible way to reach an airport. Jenny feels stuck because almost every part of her emotional life has become connected to the decision. Leaving means confronting Sumit's fear, disappointing the man she fought years to marry, reopening old tensions with her daughters, facing uncertainty about her health, and possibly questioning whether the life she built in India still works for the person she is becoming. Sometimes the hardest cages are built from promises people willingly made when circumstances were completely different. Jenny promised herself that choosing Sumit was worth everything she lost. Now she has to decide whether honoring that old choice means continuing to sacrifice or finally allowing herself to change the rules. Sumit faces an equally difficult decision. He can keep treating Jenny's departure like a threat and risk proving every critic who accused him of controlling the relationship right, or he can do something that may feel completely unnatural after years of fighting to keep Jenny beside him. He can help her leave. That would be the real test of his love. Not whether he can sit beside Jenny on the flight. Not whether he gets permission to enter America at exactly the right moment. Not whether he can convince her daughters that he is a devoted husband. The test is whether Sumit can support a choice that may take Jenny thousands of miles away from him, without demanding a guarantee about what happens next. Jenny spent years showing that she was willing to risk everything for their relationship. Now the balance has changed. If Sumit truly believes their marriage is as strong as they have always claimed, he may have to watch Jenny walk through airport security without him, return to the country she once gave up, reconnect with the family she left behind, and trust that love does not disappear simply because two people are temporarily on opposite sides of the world. And that is what makes this twist so uncomfortable. Because Jenny's biggest obstacle may never have been India itself. It may have been the belief that after sacrificing so much to stay, choosing to leave even temporarily would somehow mean that all those years were a mistake. If Jenny finally understands that she does not owe anyone another sacrifice just to prove the last one was worth it, then the entire dynamic between her and Sumit changes. She can love him and still leave first. She can choose America for a while without rejecting India forever. She can listen to her daughters without letting them control her. She can care about Sumit's fears without carrying them for him. Most importantly, she can finally make one enormous decision without asking whether everyone else will survive it. The shocking possibility is not that Jenny is trapped. It is that after years of fighting for the right to stay with Sumit, she may finally realize she also needs the right to walk away from India when she believes it is best for her, even if Sumit cannot immediately follow. And if Sumit truly loves the woman who crossed the world for him, then his hardest act of devotion may be the one thing neither of them ever imagined their story would require. He may have to let Jenny board that plane without him. This story is fictional and created for entertainment purposes only.